right, folks. I'm a little bit scattered this morning. Annie and Michael, did you guys see each other last week in at the Rural Energy meeting? Oh, good. Piper's coming.
I didn't.
Oh no. Ooh, new mustache. Nice. Piper, when you're on, I love it. I'm feeling a little distracted this morning, and I'm gonna get my head in the game, I promise. But if you are able to start facilitating, that would be lovely. I'm gonna put in the chat and then post on the IARPIC site. I just got a message saying that the project in Alaska is now on the Global Methane Initiative case study website, which is fun, if not necessarily a high traffic location.
Embry, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. I was muted. Embry, you're mute.
I know. I was trying to mime. Michael has a mustache.
Oh, we got.
Should we all go make our mustaches and put them on? Or we all have stickers somewhere for our kids. I'm looking for chat. I'm going to drop in the agenda. This is the agenda, right, Margaret, that you sent yesterday? It was the Brennan.
Yeah.
The Brennan.
Yeah. I am not entirely sure whether number 3 is going to happen this month. I had been, Angie Bywater had suggested, which is a great suggestion. I had not gotten any more of a description. Oh,
hello,
2 and 3. Hey, okay,
Chris
you're
Smith.
here. Well, that's excellent.
So I'm a little bit late. I had to find the Zoom meeting, so apologies for that.
Oh no, wonderful. Okay, I thought we might just have to wait till next month because you might have to take that.
No. I've just spoken to Angela's going to join any minute. She's just in another meeting that's finishing, so she's just going to join.
Perfect. So then we have
That's
a full agenda, and we even have Robin. So I always want to put you first, Robin, because I know that you have various exciting life things as well as a fun background.
Should we do quick introductions? We have a couple new people.
Oh, good point. Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll just wait a minute. Good morning, Chris. Thanks for joining us. We'll wait for your colleague that you just mentioned, whose name I already forgot. And then do we have, are we good to start the meeting?
Yeah, I think so.
After they join, it's a smaller group I'm looking at right now. Thanks, Liz is on. So she started the recording for the meeting. Thank you for doing that for us. And another thing, agenda item I would add for Robin is last month we talked about the wrap up and all the paperwork that was needed for people to get the, I want to say NOAA, it's not NOAA, NATO funding.
Yep. Yeah.
So why don't we add that to your number 1 as well,
Okay.
just to help you guys out. We don't want to be foot dragging. If there's people we need to call directly, we're happy to help out with that.
Okay.
And then I'm a little back on my heels too, Margaret, since I got back yesterday. But I will do my best. All right, I'm not really seeing anybody else join.
What?
Back from 15 days and 3 weeks of bike riding in Portugal and Mallorca.
Yeah. I just thought.
Sounds nice.
That was super fun. Super fun. It's always good to go see the world. Remember that it's bigger than my little cubicle in my home. And that my body still works. I can ride a bike for 870 miles or whatever I did. Not everybody's version of a vacation, but it is mine.
A friend of ours just qualified for the UTMB, and I think he's gonna. Do you know what that is?
Is that mountain biking?
No, it's a 100-mile race around Mont Blanc.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Biking?
running.
Wow.
So we were like, we'll crew chief for you. If you
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I'll hand you a bottle of water.
Yeah.
What funding's available for that? Exactly. Yeah, I'm not a runner. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and get started then. Are we good?
Okay.
Oh, we've got a few more. Hello, everybody that's just joined us. I've now got 3 screens of people at the top of my list.
Yeah,
Okay.
Margaret, you've got Chris joining you. Chris has joined us. We've just had a quick conversation. So he's managed to join. I've given him a very, very short briefing. So he's gonna hopefully.
Yeah, so Angela, you're with Chris Mann, right? You're good colleagues.
Yes, yeah, we
Yeah,
work
okay.
together on
We're waiting
various
for
things.
making, okay. So real quick, I'm Piper Peterson. I work at the Environmental Protection Agency in the Superfund Hazardous Waste Cleanup Program, but I also occasionally wear the facilitator hat. So I've been helping Margaret and Embry work on this project since I guess we're on year, did we say 3 or is this year 4? I don't know, I've lost track. So much fun, it doesn't matter. And so Margaret and Embry, why don't you introduce yourselves as captains of the ship, and then we'll go around everybody else.
Sure, yeah. I'm Margaret McCauley. I'm with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and we have a tribal treaty responsibility to folks who are here all along in the Americas. And one of the common requests we get is for a way to manage feces, human wastes, in situations where the piped sewage isn't going to work. And so that has been eluding us for a long time. So I thought I would reach out around the world and find out what other folks are learning and doing. And it's been great. Yeah, Embry.
I'm Embry Bronstead. I'm a poop engineer in Washington State, and I was corralled early on by Margaret to help her in this endeavor. She called me and she said, "Hi, I'm Margaret from the EPA. What do you know about anaerobic digestion when it's cold?" And I'm like, "It's probably gonna be really hard to mix." And that's fell off now. So we're just sort of partners in crime here.
All right.
Okay.
Chris, I see you next.
Yeah, so my name's Chris Mann. I'm Chief Technology Officer, Chairman, and co-founder of Benneman. Benneman is cleaning up dairy poop, I guess, but I'm sure it's equally applicable to human poop. I've had many conversations with Angela in the past about it, and we do no heating. We do it all cold, so we just let nature take its course. So I can give you an update of where we are and what we do.
Great. I don't see you, Angela, but I know you're associated with Chris. So why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Angie Bywater. I'm I've done stuff with Chris. I'm based at the University of Southampton at the moment. We have in fact, even as we speak, I am at a trade meeting. So I'm just nipped out of the wine and cheese. So
Great,
AD, my background's
guys.
all AD stuff. So.
Okay, great. It's nice having you and nice meeting you both. All right, who else do I see? Robin, good morning. With your pumpkin. Thanks for being festive. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, I clicked that a few times. Sorry, I'm Robin. I'm based over in the UK and participated in this group from the beginning. I admit to specializing in large scale or industrial scale AD mostly. On the other hand, this has been certainly a passionate project for me, and I was instrumental in bringing the group together through the NATO fund. I know that this meeting will be the only one before Halloween, so I put the picture up behind me. That pumpkin, this is just a recent photograph, so just to prove it doesn't always rain in Scotland, but that picture, the pumpkin is actually sitting pretty much on a sea disposal pipe of sewage that operated until about 30 years ago. So it's relevant to what we're doing here. And since that was connected to a proper treatment system, we can swim in the sea. Prior to that, we never could. So it's relevant to our thinking. All right, so that's enough from me. I'm a biologist, by the way, that deals in big engineering systems.
Only Robin could connect a pumpkin with AD and sewage and cleanup. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Very memorable.
There you go.
All right, Michael, I see you next. Michael with his mustache. There we go. Michael McClure with a mustache.
You know, I'm not sure. That may be the most interesting thing about me today. Mike Marcarella, I work for the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, also a public health service officer. I work up in Anchorage, Alaska. Our work is predominantly focused on planning, design, and construction of sanitary facilities. So my interest in this is more about making solids go away necessarily than making biogas, but that's a nice byproduct for me. I've been around for a couple of years, mostly, well, all the whole time from up here. And the reason for the mustache, if you got to know, is I got stranded on Diomede a couple of weeks back. The helicopter never came back, broke down, and I was out there for quite a while. So I grew a beard. When I came back, I just started shaving this part first. And then I was like, that looks a little different. Maybe we'll leave that and see if that drives people crazy. It does seem to have an impact. So
where were you stranded? Is that an island or like
Little Diomede's the point closest to Russia. It's where you literally can see Russia. Russia is 2 miles away. There's 2 islands, and they're right in kind of where the Bering Sea, up by where the land bridge was. Well, not the land bridge, north of the land bridge, but it's like it's a very contentious spot. It's probably the most difficult place I've ever seen anyone live. Everything is pretty much vertical. The houses are all built into like a semi-frozen pile of sort of rounded boulders that are constantly moving downward. So foundations there are tenuous at best. And it's one of the places we have a water plant there, but we're trying to figure out how to do a pipe system there. But
flexible hoses, it sounds like. Certainly.
Yeah, there's a bunch of proposals, but actually having stayed there for 9 days, I don't think that. I have my doubts about how the proposals are going to work out. Well, I tend to think more linearly, and I think dynamite is the only solution. I think we need to blow a section of the hillside, level it out, and put some facilities there because there's just no room. Anyway, another story.
Interesting. Well, you can show us a picture if you have something that's telling. That would be interesting to see.
So
thank goodness.
What do they do for poop out there, Michael?
Right now?
Yeah.
Looks a lot like some of the presentations we saw, where the guys were cutting the bags and just letting them drain right into the ocean. Only they don't cut the bags. They just sort of throw a plastic bag full of waste directly into the ocean, right in front of the community, actually. So it's a rough situation.
Well, I'm sorry you were stranded there. Better than the astronauts.
Yeah, much shorter period and much more enjoyable. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Alex, I see you next.
Hi everyone, Alex Tapilis with the Agency of Agriculture. Chris Mann, I think we've been in touch with your group there on digesters for Vermont, and I am intent on this again, like Chris, for the agricultural connection or what we can learn about these designs for an agricultural situation. Might also be good for human sanitation in remote locations here in the Northeast, for that matter. So that's my interest, is weatherizing probably bag digesters for agricultural purposes.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome again. Jasmine.
Hello, my name is Jasmine. I was under environmental as a rural environmental specialist. I'm also a first-year grad student here at the University of Kansas. Been a part of the group for about 2 years now, and my interest within anaerobic digestion live, collecting psychophilic methanogens and then creating a psychophilic seed with those methanogens. And I'll be pursuing some of that work here at KU. But yeah, super excited to be part of this group and happy to meet everybody. And I know some people have met you in person, but yeah.
My whole family's are Jayhawks, so There we go. We have a connection, Jasmine. I was born in Kansas City. Let's see, who else? Simone.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm off video this morning. I'm doing a school run here. Yes, so I'm Simone Sabala. I'm the Deputy Director at Zender Environmental Health and Research Group, along with Jasmine. We are part of, we're a nonprofit out of Anchorage, Alaska. And my background's in environmental engineering. Did my master's thesis project on testing prefab compost toilets in rural communities in Western Alaska. And we work with rural communities across the state on waste and environmental issues, which includes honey bucket issues. And Lynn Zender, our executive director, is also belongs to this group. She just couldn't make it today, and I can't make the entire meeting today, but we'll stay on as long as I can.
That's great. Welcome and thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Hi, Annie.
Hey, I'm Annie Corrigan. I work at the National Renewable Energy Lab. I'm at the Fairbanks office, and I am here because I am helping direct, facilitate, execute the EPA's pilot study on seasonal anaerobic digestion. So that's actually on site at our Fairbanks campus here.
And I'm not seeing an agenda item, but you are always on the agenda, so we'll get an update on the project. Thank you. Okay, now let's go back. Top of the agenda. Anybody join us while we are doing some introductions? I'm not seeing anybody else. All right, Robin. First off, talk about paperwork and NATO and anything else you need from us. And you can name names.
Well, thank you. Like one or two others said, I don't think I can go on with the meeting for more than the 1 hour or so, but I think that's all we're timetabled today, isn't it? Anyway, so that's fine.
Okay. You're right. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. As far as the group tasks for, I'm looking at my second screen on the side here as well. Any group tasks, this, to the best of my knowledge, we have done absolutely everything that we were asked or expected to do for the NATO program. So all the reporting was done. I've not had a single bit of feedback to suggest that that's wrong. But what I do know is that people haven't been paid for their expenses and everything else out of that account. So I'm going to ask Simone whether in fact we have yet received into Zender, not into me, but in or our account, but has Zender received any feedback at all, or preferably money, Simone, from the NATO budget to allow disbursement?
Yes, and can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yes. In fact, we did just receive a payment from NATO. So yay, we finally got it. That it was making that call directly to Richard Bruin in Brussels that did the trick. So for whatever reason, he didn't see all of our many emails sent this summer. But yeah, he was really, happy and satisfied with everything he sent, and they just sent the final payment. So, and then now, having heard back from Pernilla, that was the last piece of information we needed for the bank transfers. So now we have all of that, and we will be heading to the bank to get all of those out the door. So sorry for the delay on everything. We were just waiting to get, that final payment and also everyone's bank transfer info. So I think we've got what we need, and hopefully we'll be getting to the bank, if not later this week, early next week, to get those out. So thanks for your patience, everyone.
Okay, well, thanks for that. That's really helpful to know that. In administrative terms, it's fair to say that almost no two people had a similar kind of arrangement as far as banking details. So I know that the Zender Bank had queried things because, some of the requested transfers are to personal banks, others to institutions, others to government pockets, let's say, and ours to a small Ltd company. So it's all confusing. And I know that from Zenda's point of view, it has been difficult to get the admin sorted out. So thanks for that, Simone, and thanks for the patience from everybody else. But hopefully that's now going to work out. The actual follow-up to the Science for Peace, I am going to pass on to Embry in a moment as item 3 on the agenda, because the whole point of the NATO funding was to create the workshop environment for us, and of course those that were there will remember that as a really good event. And NATO, the people that we've been in communication with, to be perfectly honest, did seem impressed with what we'd achieved. Their administration is another story, but individually they did seem really pleased with what had been done. So the next step is to take that forward to something bigger and better beyond that. And that was the purpose of it. NATO does definitely have this policy of only funding bigger projects that have gone through a workshop type of event successfully. So we have gone through that. We've achieved it. We've done everything that has opened the door to the next round of funding. And it was largely down to the agreed group of people to plan for the next proposal for that. And just to remind anybody who has not been in the group until recently, NATO does have a program of environmental science for peace, which is in the name, the clue is in the name. So this is not a military objective or anything else. It's about environmental protection. It's about leaving no trace for whatever your activities. They obviously are to some extent governed by military objectives, but they see the benefit in environmental research in terms of protecting everything that surrounds them and surrounds us and the member nations and the partner nations as well. It's not just about those within the NATO group. So it is an opportunity, but it's not the only one. So there are other things that the group can talk about. In my own defense, I've been horribly busy for the last few months. That will ease off, but it has been difficult for me to participate. But I've been trying to close off the Science for Peace program to open the door, and we have for the next group. And I think it's also worth mentioning, just to take a minute longer, NATO people, the individuals, came back via me to say that there are other people within the NATO group that would like to see the application go forward as potential participants as well. So there is a positive attitude within the funder that we should capitalize on, but it is down to the science team rather than just me as a pusher for that to get the proposal forward. So that's all I wanted to say, and thank you for that. Thank you for listening. And there are next steps. Joy, who is my associate handling a lot of the admin on this, does send her apologies today, by the way. She's not able to attend, but she is there to help move forward on the admin if that works out and is good for the group. But it is now the science push that's needed. So that's all from me, unless anybody has any questions.
And this is Simone again. I'll just second what Robin said when I talked to Richard directly. He also was very, giving accolades to the work we did and, very much suggesting that we put in for the next step, the larger funding source. So, yeah, I got the same words from him as Richard did. So that was good.
Can you remind us of the timeline for the larger application or the larger project next steps?
My understanding is that they follow a similar pattern to the last one. So realistically, February is where we should be with a proposal. I haven't checked recently, and I know they do move them a little bit, but I'm expecting February. I can, once I go on to mute, I'll just double check that and reintroduce that if there's any update on that. But I believe it's February. They do 2 calls a year, but to be honest, I would like to see it done in February, and I will help wherever I can to move it forward, because I think while it's fresh in people's mind, within the year is perfect. It should be done.
Right. Hi, Nate. I saw you that you joined us. And then if you can, you can either just jump in with a date and if there's a link, I know we've
that
talked
was
a
my
little bit
question.
about the
Yeah.
extent of the project, but sort of what needs to be done. I'm just going to highlight just real quick. We're in October, so we're running into November, December, which aren't highly productive months sometimes, especially December. People in the close of year, travel, or those kinds of things. So it gives you about 3 months, let's say 3 to 4 working months, just to light a fire. So let's come up with one of the items at the end of the meeting, maybe if not now, come up with who are the key people that are taking a lead on it, not doing all the work, but sort of staying in the responsible seat to keep an eye on this ball.
So we can update that. I don't want to take too much away from Chris because I know that y'all are late and later, but Margaret and I do have a plan and roles and responsibilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great. And you can share that too by email if we don't have time for the meeting today. That there's, Okay. So do you want to move on to Chris and Angela? Yeah. Okay.
So
great.
right,
Welcome, you guys.
Thanks, guys. Can I share my screen? And I've got a little presentation that hopefully I don't know how much you guys know about Benneman already. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can see the screen. And I don't know that. Tell us all you want about Benneman.
We're all ears. We know very much.
Okay. I'm going to be about 15-20 minutes if that's all right. Do we have time for that?
Sure.
Okay. Right. So basically, Benneman doesn't make methane. We capture methane. It's simple. That's the first thing I'd like to say. So don't confuse us with anaerobic digesters. We set out to solve the problem of fugitive methane from dairy and other livestock and humans, of course. But so we are now part of the CNH industrial group. CNH is Case New Holland, so you may know the name New Holland. You probably know the name Ferrari, Bugatti as well. So now our parent company is the Exor Group, which is basically the Fiat industrial group. So we're now part owned by them. I'm based in Cornwall. We have a huge part of the dairy industry is in the southwest in Cornwall. I found out about 30% of all dairy is produced in Cornwall, Devon, and Somerset. We're now up to about 100 people. We've over doubled our workforce in the last year. I was totally inspired to eradicate fugitive methane when I came across this problem, which I'll show you a little bit about it in a minute. And we're now just over 50% is owned by CNH Industrial, Case New Holland Industrial, and we're just about to go out into the international market. So it's been a bit of a journey. The last 2 years, about 18 months ago, CNH invested in us with a view to taking us onto the global stage. This is the problem we solve. Hopefully you can see a video playing. This is a typical slurry lagoon in the UK, and these are all over Europe as well, and Ireland. And what you're seeing there is a very large biogas boil coming off a lagoon that's been there since the 1970s. This is in the mid.
I'm sorry, Chris. Are you telling me that bubbling is methane biogas?
Biogas. It's biogas. Yeah. And that's been running like that since around about 1977. And what you're seeing there is about 10 cubic meters of biogas being emitted into the atmosphere. And this is in the middle of February. You'll see another bowl go off to the right in a second. And that's doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days in the year. And the amount given off will be varying depending on temperature and the amount of slurry that's going in. And now we understand this exactly why, but this has not been recognized by the international greenhouse gas auditing teams or accounts. So when we came across this in around about 2015, we decided this is a massive problem that people should know about, but B, it's a massive opportunity if you can capture it. And what you've also seen there is around about £10 worth, £10 in money's worth of methane actually gone off into the atmosphere. Now, one of the things that people don't realize about methane is actually over 20 years, it's going to be responsible for about 42% of all global warming. I think that number is about to go up because of what I'm going to show you in a minute. And that is because methane is such a powerful global warming gas. It's got so many bonds, it absorbs such a broad spectrum of infrared compared to CO2 that it's around about 80 times stronger than CO2. But the great thing about methane is whilst it's really bad for the environment, it's also it's a fuel. So once you've captured it and upgraded it, you can use it to power tractors, generators, trucks. It's a direct replacement for fossil fuels. So you have the combined benefit that you have a massive impact on global warming because the methane is very powerful. But secondly, you then offset any fossil fuels that are used. So for a farm, for example, about 4 years ago, we started to demonstrate the first energy independent dairy farm. So if I look at what's recently happened is in California and also in the UK and our own data, up until recently, the methane from lagoons was considered to be a small fraction of the amount of methane that's given off by the animal itself. So the enteric emissions, that's the burps and the flatulence from the cow, haven't really changed. They're pretty easy to measure. So they're still around about 100 kilos per cow per year. But at the time, the UK and other countries in Europe were actually only allotting about 10 kilograms of methane for what's coming off the slurry and manure. And what we now know is actual facts. It went up last year to 38 kilograms, but actually now it's now been, we're measuring 170 kilograms per cow per year from the slurry and the manure. And that's assuming the cow is only in the shed for about 7.5 months. So if they're in all year round, then that number is closer to 300 kilograms. And this has now been peer-reviewed data. So it's irrefutable that this is real. So what a lot of people also don't realise is that everyone talks about reaching net zero for CO2, but CO2 is a very long-lived gas. It's half-life around about 120 years. Methane's around about 10 years. And these curves, what they show, I won't go into the detail, but the curve on the right shows what we have to do to methane. The light blue line is to get down to around 200 million tonnes removed from the atmosphere every year in order to reach the 2050 net zero challenge of 1.5 degrees centigrade. And what people don't realise is that if we don't do that, then we are on one of the other curves above it. So we're looking at 2 to 4 degrees or even 5 to 8 degrees increase in temperature. So methane must be taken out of the atmosphere. Otherwise, we cannot reach 1.5, no matter what we do with carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide is such a weak global warming gas, and actually it's so long-lived as well. So to give you an idea what that means in terms of livestock, well, currently it's attributed to about 30% of all methane emissions. So we've got to remove 200 million tonnes a year. So if we stick to the 30%, I believe it's going to be uprated to 40 to 45% in the near term because of what I just showed you. That is a recurring 60 billion kilograms of fugitive methane fuel must be removed from the atmosphere. And currently the value of methane is around about £2 a kilo. So you're looking at 120 billion conservative yearly revenue stream. Now, when you're dealing with methane, when you look at the global warming potential of it, it is very confusing because it's so short-lived and so powerful. So what we've done is we've moved away from the GWP 100. This is internally within Benneman and also within an organisation called IFEA, the International Fugitive Emissions Abatement Association. And what we've done is we've said, what's the climate impact of an action? Rather than trying to compare it to CO2 or come to some equivalent, we said, what's the physics behind it? And if I take 1 kilogram of CO2 out of the atmosphere today and store it, how much cooler will the planet be in 2050? And the answer is there. It's actually 1.22 times 10 to the minus 15 degrees centigrade. So if I take a kilogram of CO2 out of the atmosphere, then I get around about a femtokelvins reduction in temperature in 2050. Now, if I do the same thing with methane, I get 9.54 times 10 to the minus 14. It's around about 76 times higher. So if I take out a kilogram of methane from a lagoon, as I've just shown you, I have a huge impact on the climate, around about 76 times stronger than CO2. And that's taken from this curve here, which is what all of the IPCC data refers back to, the Royal College of Chemistry. And that gives you the concentration of methane in the environment in terms of the CO2 equivalents over time. And so what we're looking at in 2050 is around about 76.4. I won't go into the details of removing it directly from the atmosphere because our strategy is simply just don't let it get into the environment. I put some numbers together. I did this yesterday, so I gave a talk to an agricultural college. And really, once you recognise that the methane is coming off the lagoon, you don't really have to worry about the other emissions from the farm. So what I put in this chart is, this is using the 20 because people are familiar with it, 20-year global warming potential. The fugitive methane is around about 1,300 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. That represents 59% of a 100-head dairy farm, okay? So 60% is purely down to the slurry and the manure. Then you've got the fugitive methane from the cow itself, which comes around about a third of that, which is about 35%. And then you look at the fuel from the diesel tractor, 2.5%, the fertilizer, 3.9%, all small change really compared to the methane emissions. I convert that to GWP 100 just because that's what people are used to. And if I do the same numbers, I end up with 458 tons of CO2 for the methane from the slurry and 270 from the breath of the cow. And again, the numbers are slightly now more important because this just shows you how things change in terms of the fuel and the carbon footprint. You can see that actually the diesel and the actual fertilizer carbon footprint is now significantly higher, around 17%, whereas previously you'll see they're down at sort of 7%. And this just shows why you can't use an equivalent number. You need to look at the physics of it. So if we now say, right, we're going to capture that methane, I'll show you how we do that in a minute. We're going to capture that methane and we're going to replace all the fossil fuels used on the farm. And we're also going to generate all the electricity to get rid of the electricity content. And when we do that, we're seeing around about a 50% reduction in the requirement for fertilizer. And when we do that, that means we've just reduced the carbon footprint of the farm from 872 tons down to 310 tons. And when you look at it, that's now 95% of that is down to the methane coming off the cow's breath. So how do we finally get rid of that last bit? Well, there's lots of things we can do. We can add additives to the feed for the cow, and we're seeing some people quoting 50% reduction. What we've actually found is that means that energy has to go somewhere, and it means that there's more methane coming out of the slurry, but that's okay because now we're capturing it. We can take some of the other waste on the farms. Now, if it's a dairy, you've got dairy waste, manure, crop waste, the residues, and feed waste when the cows have spoiled the food. You can also put renewable energy, export that from the farm. So you can start to get the carbon footprint down. But really, the one thing that really makes a big hit is the sequestering of carbon. So if you're now looking at an optimized pasture for dairy, an extensive farm, you're looking at around about 1 ton of carbon, which equates to around about 1 ton of carbon per hectare, which equates to around about 3.7 tons of CO2 equivalent. So what that means now is if you've got a 100-hectare farm and you're just running a sensible pasture process using no-till, then you're going to sequester roughly the equivalent of 370 tons of CO2. And that will then offset the final enteric methane. So you can get that farm down to be next to zero. And I'll show you numbers from a farm that we've been working on for the last few years, which is approaching those sorts of numbers now. How do we do it? So first thing that we did was we realized that what we've got going on there, that anaerobic digestion that you're seeing in that lagoon, those great big boils, that's all happening around about 16 degrees centigrade. 16 degrees centigrade, why is that important? Well, when you dig a few meters down into the ground, that's the temperature of the soil. And it's that temperature, not because it's being heated from above, that's basically the geothermal energy coming up through the planet. And what people don't realize is that the reason the planet is so warm is because 60% of the heat that we experience in our atmosphere is actually coming up through the soil. So dig down a hole, measure the ground at 16 degrees. And at that point, you get anaerobic digestion occurs much more slowly than the mesophilic, which is typically between 30 and 38 degrees, but it's consistent and it's very stable. It's a very stable process. And this is the kind of process that you see in marshes and marsh gas and things like that. So we build a great big hole in the ground, we seal it with a great big bag, and then we put a great big bag of gas over it, although we're moving away from that, and I'll show you how. We capture the gas, we clean it, and then we store it above the lagoon. So it's basically CO2 and methane at this point. And then we have a mobile upgrading system, which has now been built by our partners CNH. So this is now in production. There's a factory that builds this in Italy. That mobile upgrader turns up to the farm and it will process all of the biogas into fuel grade methane on site in around about 20 hours. And then it'll go to the next farm and do the same thing. And this is how we share the cost of that equipment between farms. You can then take that gas and you can power a generator, Fiat Powertrain FPT. They're the people who make the engines for the tractors. You can fill a tractor. We've actually got an off-grid charging system that isn't even connected into the grid and charges 8 cars a day. Or you can run gas vehicles. And most of the supermarkets in the UK are now moving over to biomethane. So this is an established technology. We've been working with the council in Cornwall. So we've now got 4 of these farms up and running. And we've actually also got a site at the Waitrose. For those of you who know, Waitrose is the sort of upmarket supermarket in the UK. I'll show you a little video in a minute. Their whole fleet is now running on biomethane, some of which is going to be coming from our site. So we have 9 of these sites now operating, and we're taking that fuel and we're putting it into tractors and trucks. And I have my own methane tractor, and I'm proud to say it's never actually taken any fossil gas apart from when it was in the factory. Other than that, it's only ever been running off fugitive methane. So how do we do it? Effectively, sunlight lands on grass. We know cows eat the grass. They don't absorb all the energy in the grass. What's left ends up in the slurry. That goes through an anaerobic process because there's no way for oxygen to get into the slurry. It naturally produces raw biogas. We clean that gas, take out the hydrogen sulfide. We then process it into compressed biomethane. We're also working on liquid methane, but that's for the future. We take that fuel and we run the tractor, we generate electricity, or we power trucks. And the digestate, or the slurry residue that's left, is a very watery substance that has all the nutrients that the grass had and took up in the first place. So get it right, it's a completely circular process. I've got a little video here that sort of shows what they're doing at Leckford. It gives you an idea.
I'll do the sound effects.
If any of you have got any questions as we go, please don't feel free to just butt in and ask. This gives you some of the benefits other than the actual energy side of things from a typical farm. So this is latest data from a farm in Cornwall that we've been operating now for 3 years. In 2021, they did a carbon audit of the farm and it had a carbon footprint around about 734 tons of CO2. After capturing all of the methane from the lagoon and also doing some regenerative farming, but also growing hedges and some woodland, they've got their carbon footprint down to 87 tons. This is probably one of the lowest carbon dairy farms in the UK in terms of the milk. But in doing so, what they've seen is that obviously they've offset their diesel, they've offset their fertilizer, they saved over 50% of their fertilizer because they're not spreading rainwater, because no rainwater gets into it. They're doing something like 200 less slurry tanker loads, and that's around £440 a load. And they're also seeing a much higher protein from their silage, so they're reducing their feed costs. We're also seeing improved grass concentration, worm density. So the soil is being regenerated, and that's something that we want to look at in more detail going forward. And the product, of course, is now one of the lowest carbon milks that you can buy.
What does FPCM mean, per FPCM?
So that is fat, protein, something. It's basically it's the energy in the milk. So it's basically the amount of fat and the protein. Maybe you know, Angela, do. It's a term they use for the energy within the milk. Some apologies,
Okay.
I don't know the actual phrase, but it's similar to calories in that sense. So we're obviously now partnered by New Holland. New Holland have a methane tractor in production, so you can buy these. I've got one myself. They've built 200 recently, and most of those are now sold, and they're building more. On the right-hand side, you see Biocycle. That's now in production as well. This is the mobile upgrader, so this can be shipped, taken on the back of a truck or towed on the back of a trailer to the farm, processed, and then taken to the next farm. So it's all built on a production line. There's nothing assembled on site. Just to give you proof, this is Kev Hoare. He did his whole silage cut using his own methane on his farm. So obviously this is real. This is something that you can do. It's not hydrogen. It's not electric. It's actually a real working tractor that are now being built in production. Little schematic. So obviously building a great big hole in the ground, there's a lot of expense associated with that. If the farmer's already got a hole, then what we do is we have a retrofit cover. And this is made in similar to sort of like your children's play bricks approach, where each tile is a manageable size and it's held together using a gas type seal, which has the same strength as the material itself. And that allows us to deploy it very quickly onto an existing lagoon. The same thing after that occurs, we capture the gas, we filter it, and then we store it in a gas store. And when those stores are full, we upgrade it using the mobile upgrader, turning it into fuel. So it's a very simple system. This is our first system actually fully live now in Cornwall. Just to give you an idea, this is real. Each one of those tiles is made in a factory. We've got 3 production sites in Europe making those tiles. Everything that you see here is now in the production supply chain, so we can start to expand rapidly. The first solution is all about ammonia, because we have a massive problem in the UK with ammonia. This is the thing that you can smell coming off the lagoon. So a farmer can cover his lagoon, prevent any ammonia release from his lagoon store. He then immediately hits his regulatory compliance, and he starts to see the fertilizer savings, because of course that ammonia is the nitrates that you use in the soil. It's set up so that later on, once he starts to see some savings, we can go back and connect it up and start to capture and process the methane. For a small to medium-sized farm, you can actually achieve some level of independence by running the biogas directly through an engine, generating some power. So we call that capture the power. And then finally, for the larger farms, and by the larger farms, I mean 300 cows plus, they've got enough methane production that they can go entirely energy independent. So they benefit from additional revenue streams. They can take a tractor on board. And then we can start to claim what's called the RTFC, which is the Renewable Transport Fuel Certificate, which is an obligation that the oil and gas companies have to pay because they don't produce enough renewable energy. And going forwards, we believe there's a huge opportunity for carbon credit, because what we're doing is really, on a daily basis, is taking effectively methane out of the environment and using it to displace carbon and fossil fuels. I won't go through all the details, but these are some of the things that you see as soon as you do this, you exclude the rainwater. One of our farms had 2 meters of rain, a meter of rain in 2 weeks over the winter last year. That means they're spreading less of the remaining slurry residue. They see this fertilizer savings. They prevent ammonia being released, which is a big problem in the UK in terms of planning. It's eligible for a grant, so it covers half the cost, gets some compliance with the Environment Agency, and then they start to see some of the soil regeneration. As I say, the next one gives you a level of independence, start to save money on electricity. They get carbon credit revenue, and they can also sell the excess electricity to the grid. And then finally, the full capture for power, you get the energy independence, you can have a tractor, truck, generator, and also claim the carbon credit. So in short, what we've really done by capturing that waste gas that's coming off of slurry stores, which is already there. So we're not doing anything to enhance the buildup of methane or biogas. All we're doing is capturing exactly what's there at, cold temperatures, relatively cold temperatures. And we're taking those emissions and we're turning them into fuel. And so we're solving, a massive problem in agriculture, but not just the problem of energy, but also the problem of fertilizers and slurry management. So we eradicate slurry runoff, we eradicate ammonia release from the slurry stores, and you get that for free. So we really do believe that what we're doing now is turning livestock emissions from being a problem as to part of the solution. And that, I believe, is the end of the. If you want any more information, please scan the screen, and you can go on our website, and it's all there.
I have questions, but I'll shut up and
That's cool. All right. Anybody else have shorter questions or conversation than everybody's going to have? Otherwise, we'll let her go first. She may cover what you're interested in too. All right. Nobody's diving in head first. Nate's raising his hand.
Yeah, this is, first of all, this is amazing. And I'm just wondering, I'm so used to seeing amazing demonstrations like this, basically having a problem being economically viable. But you mentioned that by moving around some of the infrastructure, like having a mobile gas scrubber unit, that's one of the ways you can basically share the cost and reduce it. Is there basically some investment from governments or other things like that are making this viable? Because obviously it's a thing that we should be doing. I'm wondering how you're getting enough upfront capital to make it happen initially.
Yeah. So the business model is based around the Renewable Transport Fuel Certificate. Okay, so that is an obligation to the oil and gas companies, and that effectively doubles the value of the fuel. So that's the first thing. So Benneman manages the whole thing. The Environment Agency gives us a permit per farm. The farmer himself can't run gas upgrading equipment. The qualifications you need and the skill set and the training and everything. So basically, the farmer's job finishes when the slurry goes into the lagoon. And the grant that actually makes that whole thing work at the moment covers the cover costs. So that very first cover that captures stops the ammonia being released and captures the methane, that qualifies for 50% grant from the UK government currently. It's very new, so it's only started to sort of take off in the last year. And then the upgrader we own, so Benjamin owns the upgrader, and we provide the people that run it. And then we also sell the gas into the open market to whoever pays the most. We also claim all the subsidies, and we share that with the farmer, so the farmer gets the revenue stream. That's the sort of determined on who puts the money in. So if Benjamin makes a bigger investment, we take a bigger slice. And then the carbon capture at the moment, 1 ton of methane is worth effectively 76 tons of CO2, and the market value is around about £50 a ton. So, that adds around about £5 to £8 in value to a single kilo of methane. It's really quite impressive. So, and of course, all of that has to be audited. So end to end is like we have how much feed's gone into the cow, how many cows there are, how much slurry's gone in the lagoon. Everything is metered. And then when it goes into the tractor, for example, the tractor monitors how much fuel is used, GPS data. So we can prove that methane has been generated, captured, utilized, absolutely, on the day where it's been done. So it's almost infallible from that sense in terms of carbon and carbon credits, which is something that's required. So yes, we anything that governments can do can accelerate it. Italy give you a 50% subsidy on the tractor, for example. So because they're about 30% more expensive than diesel currently, the price is coming down all the time. And then there's various subsidies that exist in different countries. So in France, you might put the methane into the grid because they subsidise grid injection. It's a lot easier, and that's the same for Holland and Belgium. Ireland don't really have any infrastructure at all, so they're struggling to find out how they're going to subsidise it at the moment. But yeah, it's everyone we show it to, they love it. And the reason I haven't heard about it is because we knew it was going to be big, and we kept quiet about it for as long as we could until we were ready to start to scale, which is where we are now.
Yeah, that's
Somebody in
amazing.
the question, just go ahead, Nick. Follow.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks so much for the great answer.
Yeah, pleasure.
And Jasmine's asked in the chat, can it be applied to human sewage lagoons?
Absolutely, it's one of my dreams. Sounds sad, but yeah, I mean, it basically. I think you've got to be a little bit careful about what you put in there. So you don't really want harsh chemicals. We have seen examples where farmers have been overzealous using formaldehyde and things like that, and it kills the bugs for a while. But they always come back, right? I mean,
power the bugs.
Power the bugs. So human poo. Yeah, I mean, the paper actually will also generate methane. So toilet paper, urine. What you don't really want in is really about managing waste like plastics and things. People flush down toilets. That's probably the biggest thing I'd be worried about. But other than that, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically in the UK we have things called cess pits, which is basically it is a container that takes the human waste from a house, the big bulb that goes in the ground. It's producing methane if you go over and put it over there. It's already been done, but no one's utilizing it. So I'm absolutely convinced. Yeah, it'd be no problem. And the great thing is you can make a very big store, very easily. So you can dig a hole. The covers are really well engineered. We deploy them very quickly generally. So yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't have a small town in Africa could have something like this, and then actually they'd have a massive benefit.
What's your biggest what's the biggest hole that you've got for the fabric and the liners and whatnot?
So the one that is the one that I showed in that video is probably the biggest. That's about 75 meters by 40. But we would probably we've gone away from digging bigger ones to just digging smaller ones. They're a lot quicker proportionally. It's a lot easier to dig a small hole. The engineering is a lot easier. So you're better off having two smaller ones rather than one really big one.
So you have this terminology, balloon and tile. So balloon is the big one, is 70 by 40, and the tile is how big?
They're 10 meters by 10 meters. We've just done around 20 by 20. So some of the lagoons we're on are huge. I mean, you'll see certainly in America, I wouldn't be surprised if you've got lagoons that are probably 200 or 300 meters long by 100 meters wide. I've certainly seen pictures in California and Texas and places like that for some of these big feedlots. So we've adapted the system so it can be just a floating cover, and then we capture the gas elsewhere rather than above the lagoon. And we can scale that much more quickly as well. We can deploy it quickly and scale it quickly. So it gets you going much faster.
Chris, there was a lot of background noise here, but did you manage to mention the paper, the published paper that Neil and
I did mention it very briefly in the beginning. I'll just refer back to that because it's sort of key, because we've really had a lot of barriers getting to this point, because we knew the methane was there, but all of the inventories for the UK didn't accept it. And I've just highlighted here, this is the two papers really. The one that's just come out recently, which is from the University of East Anglia, who've been doing this, and also from IFEA, this organization that's been helping us. But also I highlight here a paper in California. They've gone away and measured it. So the 144 is the enteric methane, and 332 is the methane from the cow's slurry. And this is averaged across 600 farms. So, you know, the data is indisputable now. So it's something that's really, really important to the environment, because, you know, without taking that into account, sorry, I should have shared my screen to show you that. Let me just do that again. Oops, sorry. So yeah, so what I'm showing you here is a paper that was done in California. It's funded by the UK, California state government, I believe, where they sent out a truck loaded up with methane sensors, and they all drove downwind from around about 600 farms. And prior to this data, then the 144 is the enteric methane, the burps and the flatulence, and then 332 is what's coming off the slurry stores. Prior to that, they were attributing something like 20 kilograms. So without taking this into account, agriculture is at the moment deemed responsible for about 30% of methane emissions. And what we're now saying is actually, when you adjust the inventories to take this into account, it's going to be more like 40-45%, if not more, from livestock. And I think this is really important. So, you know, we've taken something which is really, when you look at it, you go, oh my God, this is terrible. Agriculture's, you know, 3 times worse than we thought. But actually, because we can capture it, it's in a concentrated form, and then upgrade that gas to something useful, we can actually offset the remaining enteric. It allows the farmer freedom from fossil fuels. So, you know, our farming, the first farm is now hasn't had diesel on the farm for over 18 months, running purely off his own methane, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. If anyone else has got any more questions, I'm more than happy to.
I do. So when you were showing the bubbler at the beginning, and you quantified it in a kilogram per hour emissions rate, how were you what is the detection mechanism? I mean, in the paper, it sounded like they have the Google car that like Princeton and Jason Wren drive around with, but what do you guys use for your emissions detection?
So when we cover the lagoon, we immediately start capturing the methane coming off it. So we have a biogas meter that literally measures that gas, and then we process it as the gas builds up. We process it by the hour, and we know exactly how much is going through the compressor. And what we see, we've had people say, "Oh, but you're changing the biology because you're putting a cover on it." But we see that from the first moment we put it on. So there's no way that you've got 2,000 cubic meters of slurry suddenly changes to aerobic or changes the conditions in a matter of hours. I can show you videos of the whole thing just literally filling up with gas. So we measure it directly. The California paper that I just showed, they actually have a truck with very sensitive methane CO2 sensors that as they drive downwind, they can separate out the different gases, and then they can extrapolate back using an algorithm. It's actually quite difficult to measure, but the technology is there now to measure it pretty accurately.
Yeah, I'd like to send you some, because we're very, very interested in fugitive methane particularly, and we're going around to all these plants with like optical gas imaging cameras and finding leaks of these things.
They're great for finding leaks, but they're not good for quantifying. So we work with IFEA. I recommend I can put a link in the chat. I recommend you contact them, because they're setting up a campaign to measure this, because the technology wasn't available. If you went back a year and a half ago, you really couldn't do it. But you can now literally put it back on, on the right day when the wind is blowing at the right sort of speed. You can walk downwind from the slurry store, and then it just measures it. It measures the CO2, methane, ammonia, at very, very high level. So it can measure the background down to 1 part per billion. And so you see the background, and then you walk through the plume and you see it go up. And then they've got algorithms that then they can calculate it back. And you
And
can
usually-
calibrate that by using a known release. We can give it a known release and then do cross calibration.
Yeah. We're doing, you and I need to chat because we're doing all
Okay, yeah, more than happy.
Because we did ask, we partnered with a drone manufacturer and a drone sniffer, Explicit, to fly over and do quantification, but I've not heard of the backpack.
The drone's great, but it's the problem with that is it's very limiting in terms of what you can do. This you can literally just put. They've actually got a car as well. If they know if the conditions are right, and the road happens to be in the right. You need the wind direction to be right.
Sure.
But they'll just drive the car straight through it a number of times, and then they'll just do a few calculations, and out comes the actual source emission concentrations. But the backpack's really good. You can go around, and you can then do local sniffing as well. So if you find a leak, you can then go and quantify it. So yeah, it's the Leakor is the. If you really want to work with us, we're looking for someone to help us because we want to measure we've got a whole bunch of farms. We've got over 300 farms in our pipeline, and we want to be doing measurements before and after. So we've got the guys you can literally just go out there on the right day and. So we need some money to buy the equipment. It's about £60,000 to buy the backpack.
I haven't put my email in the chat.
Yeah, it's a Leakor, I think is the.
Yeah, Embry,
Yeah.
you were working on that paper that got into WEF where you were checking out all the leaking methane from all the old digesters.
And we're doing
it's huge.
It's huge. And we have a bunch of projects now where we're doing head-to-head comparisons of technologies. So we're doing drones and sniffers and OGI cameras and flame ionization detection. And we're trying to go to wastewater treatment plants and do these technology comparisons to see what's better in what contexts. But I mean, agriculture is a huge, we get pushback in this country for agricultural digesters because it's greenwashing, it's, those agricultural digesters leak. And so part of what I think would be really cool for Alex in particular would be like a pre and post methane detection and quantification study for here's what a lagoon is and here's what a digester is. And don't you think that this is better? Right. So that kind of comparison would be super cool for ag digesters in this country. I don't know if you think the winds are changing, Alex, on how agricultural digesters are perceived here.
Maybe not in Vermont, but I guess I want to change the subject a little bit and ask it's a great, I love what Chris is saying about we don't make biogas because that's what a lot of people think is happening. And it's what a lot of anaerobic digestion system designs go for, of course, is to maximize the product, right? We're making biogas. That's how they think of it. So I get it. And I like the way Chris talks about it. Different topic or subject. So as I think about what this group's mission is, well, first of all, how are we doing on time?
We're 3 minutes over.
Okay, well, let me just.
3 minutes over for the whole meeting.
I'll be very brief.
If people can stay on, keep talking.
Just very briefly, our mission is sanitation in this group. Your thing, as Nate was getting to, is driven by the money for energy, basically, right? So, but when in fact, what we really give a crap about is the greenhouse gas emissions. So the whole thing is we're using the wrong thing to get to where we want to go. For sanitation, we want to go to something that's even fuzzier than greenhouse gas emissions. It's like human welfare, right? But and I think about and I've thought about how do we get money to do the sanitation thing? How do I get money to do these greenhouse gas mitigation efforts of manure slurry? And now you've brought up the IFEAA. They care about fugitive emissions. If you were not in this business of doing energy stuff, you could just cover that pit and flare the gas and get your money that way. If there were any money for greenhouse gas mitigation. But there was carbon credits. So you're stuck with that. So IFEAA, are they someone who knows how to get money to reduce fugitive greenhouse gas emissions from a voluntary market? Could that same kind of fugitive gas emissions question or goal be applied to a sanitation market? Where's the money? Do these people know where the money is?
Yeah, so the money at the moment is, as I said, it's in the carbon credits. It's in the voluntary carbon market. It's like the Wild West. It is if you go and look at the different schemes that are out there. The baseline where IFEA come in is that if you want to claim carbon credits, you have to have a perfectly audited baseline. What do I mean by baseline? I mean, the system as it is today, with no upgrades, you need to be able to measure that gas, those fugitive emissions, and go, right, as it is now, it's this. So we're going to spend, and then you go, right, so we're going to spend $100,000 and we're going to reduce those emissions, the carbon footprint of that facility by X. And that is what you're selling in the voluntary carbon market. You're selling that reduction in emissions. But in order to do that, you have to quantify the before and the after. Now, you can flare it. We start to come across issues with environmental permits if we do that. So the way we got around that is we have to scrub the gas. So we clean it already to a point where we can, and then we convert it into vehicle fuel. So if there's methane gas there, if there's biogas there, then we just upgrade it. And if you still have to flare it, you flare it. But in doing the upgrade, you absolutely quantify the amount of methane because we don't lose any. Right. So it's like that is the way to do it. And I feel they are helping us at Benneman do that, because setting the baseline is the first thing. You've got to be able to measure what it is now accurately, and then you can then compare the before and after, and then you can claim on the after in terms of your carbon credit. So yes, I definitely recommend you work with them. Now with the human sanitation, I mean, I think the thing is that where this system works and why it's so special is because it's a very slow process. It's a slower process than heating it to 38 degrees C, but the retention time is 6 months. It's not a month or 2 weeks. It could be a year. And the longer you leave it in there, we've got experiments in the lab that show slurry, cow slurry put at 16 degrees C is still producing pretty much the same rate of methane production 3 years in, which is why you're seeing those big boils on those lagoons, because there's a 2-meter sediment at the bottom that's been there and built up over, decades, and that's still producing biogas. So you get this. So you could do the same thing with human waste. You just leave it. What you're left with is a very, very nutrient-rich liquid, because you're just taking out the carbon and the hydrogen and the oxygen. That's all it leaves. That's why I'm really keen to do human waste.
Yeah, the human waste up in Alaska is the same thing, where the sediment layer is there, and once it thaws out, it's immediately active again, and it's freezing. But we really have a parallel problem here that could be a solution.
Yeah. And the great thing is you can store it. I mean, once you've upgraded it, you can store it in pressurized bottles or liquid. Okay. And that's the problem. That's why Benneman came around. Our unique thing is we make liquid and we can store liquid methane. That's our unique selling point. And we do that because in the UK, all the grass, we started on grass, waste grass, grows in the spring, summer, and autumn. We need the energy in the winter. So you've got to be able to get that methane into a very compact, dense form, which is best as liquid or next is compressed gas. And then you can store it indefinitely. So in Alaska, you're not going to produce much methane during the winter, but you're going to produce shitloads in the summer because it's going to go up to like 35, 40 degrees, right? And it's going to go completely mad. So you do all your processing, get it into a form, and then you use it in the winter. And that's when you have real value. If you can store it, the value of the storage capability is far outweighs the value of the fuel in many ways. Because if you're using renewables on a dark, windless day in the UK, guess what? The value of electricity goes from like 20p a kilowatt hour to £2.50 if you can supply it. Yeah, exactly. It's called dispatching, right? It's called dispatching. You're trading on the availability of renewables. And where we are in Cornwall at the moment, our electricity is almost zero carbon already because of the amount of wind and solar, and it's not a very dense area. So there's that ability to sell fuel or sell energy when the markets haven't got it from other renewable sources. So I think Alaska would be really interesting to look at from that perspective.
Yeah, because when you were doing your presentation and how it's just covering the lagoon, because right, because we have plenty of lagoons, especially in the remote communities, and then you mentioned like the only thing is managing it. So there are a lot of plastic bags because of the honey buckets, but of course there are communities that do manage their sewage lagoons well, and I just think that this is just a really great idea. I'm super excited that there are technologies like this happening right now, and so just very interesting. Very interesting.
I wouldn't be too worried about plastic bags. I think that those things are really simple to separate out. It's more like earbuds and stuff. I mean, there's going to be stuff in there but the water industry is really good at. They got equipment that takes that kind of stuff out now. I'm a surfer. In the old days, I'm literally looking out at the ocean now, and in the old days, you'd have earbuds and Durexes and stuff floating around. That's gone. I mean, they do screen all of that out very successfully now. So I think that's something you can get from the existing utility companies. We'll be able to do that. I think I'm more concerned about when you have people, they put down a bottle of, if they put a bottle of bleach down the toilet, then, there's a check that could stop the process, but they always recover. It just takes time.
Well, thank you. This was really cool. It was nice meeting everybody. Again, I'll have to hop off. See you guys on the next one.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks, Joseph. All right, anybody else want to stay? Want to close things down? This is fantastic meeting. I have a quick question though about milk. Does it improve the quality of the milk? Is there a different standard?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's really
seem to be a little
interesting.
nugget there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we, as I say, we got into it because of energy. We didn't anticipate any of the benefits the farmers are seeing. So the reason we reduce the amount of fertilizer is twofold, really. Firstly, the farmer, instead of the problem we had in the UK was that they would only legally have to have 3 months storage. So they would stop spreading slurry at the end of November, and then they would start again at the end of February. And it's really wet. Okay, so you take wet slurry and then you spread it on wet ground because it's wet in November and February, and it all runs off and goes in the wind into the rivers, and the soil doesn't take anything up, right? Or it doesn't take up very much. And so the farmers have now got 6 months storage. So they stop spreading in October. They can't start spreading again until the end of March at the earliest. They're not spreading till April because they know that they can get more out of those nutrients when the soil is dry, ready for it. So they'll pick the window, and they can spread it really quick because it's just like water. It's like literally putting a watering can on rather than a thick slurry that has to be sort of spread. And so they can spread it in a matter of hours on large areas of fields. And they can apply exactly when they know the crop needs it, so when the grass needs it. So what they're finding is the first data we got last year was the protein in their silage was up by 85%, right? Which is incredible because normally they would have to buy in high protein feedstocks to feed the cows. That's how they get them into the milking parlours to supplement their diet because there isn't enough protein in the grass to meet the minimum protein level in the milk. And now suddenly they're meeting it without having to add any extra feed. So we found out one of our farmers saved over £50,000 in feed for a herd of 300 cows because he wasn't having to buy the next level up in protein, right? So suddenly the milk has
£50,000 is that a weight or a monetary value?
No, that's money. That's money.
Okay, that's why I just want
it's £50,000 in money. He still had to buy feed, but he only had to buy £50,000. He literally halved his feed bill. You know, so we hadn't anticipated any of that, and that's not because we're not increasing the amount of nutrients. We're just making it that much more available to the farmer to apply, and make it that much more available to the plant. And they also use these things called trailing shoes now, which is like a little mini plow with an injector in it. So it goes through the grass, cuts a little slot, and injects the slurry residue straight to the roots. And so you can, I mean, he told me, I'm not sure I believe it, but he said they did one spread and they had to finish halfway across the field. And the next morning he woke up and one half of the field is bright green and growing, and the other half of the field is a different shape.
That's well known. That's well known.
Is that well known? Is it? Oh,
yeah,
really?
that's well known. The farmers I spoke to all love to actually do that deliberately because they could, because it's like, like mowing straight lines. And the other thing is you're putting a treated thing, so you end up with healthier animals because essentially, if you're grazing cows, you can re-graze them faster on that bit.
And you can back on it.
Yeah, because it's a treated material, and they're healthier because they're essentially not eating bits of raw slurry.
Yeah.
And also you find fossil fuel fertilizers knock back the clover in a grass blade to some extent. So digestate doesn't tend to knock back the clover, so you're able to keep the protein and the nitrogen fixing in there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that the residue from human waste would be pretty good in terms of nutrients and stuff. I would have thought. Probably better in many ways. Don't know.
My only worry always about human waste and I think Jasmine and I spoke about this was simply just where anybody's taking any kind of drugs or hormones or birth control or anything like that, any of that stuff. So you just have to be very aware where it's being spread, unless you do some pasteurization or anything up front.
Okay.
But it's not beyond the wit of man to sort out how you might use it.
Yeah. Okay. So the next phase of the project is there any way that Benjamin can get involved in that? Is it something that you'd be interested in getting us on board as a partner or something?
I think it comes down to money. How do we want to fund something like this? And where would be what would be I mean, baselining is great. You know, Embry's all excited about these backpacks. And so maybe that's part of the answer, is to baseline some of these sites in Alaska that then you could get the voluntary emissions reduction credit for the tile or whatever you put on top of there. And, you know, somebody that can help with finding that pathway of money. I looked, you know, in sort of the sanitation funder area, the Gates Foundation, Magic Toilets, and all this different stuff that, you know, is out there in that domain. Zender, you know about that. It's not my thing. Michael, I'm sure you know about that, you know, those kinds of funding, but I didn't really find much there. So I love it. And I just don't know how to, Chris, that's my take on it. Get the baseline and try to go after voluntary carbon credit funding as other people are doing. And if it's energy, great. Like you said, that makes the storage then becomes another expense. If you could just get just flare the stuff and get the credit for that, that's great. If you want to, you know, use the energy, then maybe that's the way the numbers add up. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, flaring it gives you about 95% of the benefit from an environmental point of view. It's amazing. You know, it seems crazy that the fuel becomes almost like it's a sideline. It's not, when you do the numbers, it doesn't really add up.
Icing on the cake, as we say.
Icing on the cake, literally,
Hi.
Yes,
I'm sorry I was late. Is there a place where I can read a bit about what you talked about that I missed in the beginning?
Well, we record these, so
awesome.
Where do they get stored? They get stored on IARPIC's website, right?
They do. And then Chris or Angela, can you drop a web link into
I think we get a link usually,
Yeah.
A link into the website, our website, you mean?
Your website. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I'll do that now. Yeah, I mean, the video, no, my pleasure, yeah. And there's lots of stuff online as well you can look up about, I've given previous talks.
Well, and I'll do a shameless plug because I'm just the facilitator. So to take my shameless plug with a grain of salt, you can join this group as a passion project. We're happy to take any free reduced cast-offs, covers with small tears, larger covers that you can't use in a large sense, we could use in a small sense if you can.
Okay. I'm just trying to
duct tape the small tear. I don't know. There's all sorts of, everybody's sort of doing this as other duties as assigned. Sorry, Embry, you're talking. Go ahead.
Don't duct tape them.
Don't duct tape them. Okay, I'm kidding.
I'll show you. I can show you an OGI image of what people tried to repair a biogas pipe with duct tape, and it's just.
It doesn't.
It's just. Don't do that.
Right. So any cast-offs or handoffs, but it could lead to opportunities otherwise. Especially government groups always need to be very careful treading waters of throwing support to for-profit companies over the benefit of others. So I'll just say that from an EPA employee standpoint. But we all bring our unique talents, gifts, and opportunities to sling hammers, right? Nate and all who are building projects up in Alaska for us right now. And any kind of creative engineering and out-of-the-box thinking, highly valued. That's what everybody is in this group. We're all troublemakers.
Thank you all for your time, and thank you for giving such positive feedback. I don't think I got any negative comments really, which is quite nice. But I think it is a no-brainer. It's already out there. It's just the case of getting it to scale from our perspective now. It works. You know, we've seen it. And any help you can get us there would be great.
How long have you been working on this with all the facts and figures? It seems like quite a while.
So we started in 2012. It really started to take off around about 2015. 2016 we started working with New Holland. They were developing a methane tractor in secret. Everyone else was looking at hydrogen and batteries, and they'd already done that and realized it's never going to work. And so, you know, they went down the methane road because but they didn't know where they were going to get the fuel. They realized methane was the right fuel, and then they met us, and then we said, well, actually, it's already on the farm. We just got to work out how to extract it, get it out.
Yeah.
And so we've been working pretty closely with them. And I say the liquid methane tractor is literally rocket fuel. It's the same fuel they use Elon Musk uses in his rocket. So 2 years ago, we built a liquid methane tractor that has the same autonomy as diesel, running on fugitive liquid methane. Just one passing comment. I'll just finish it. But if you run a tractor on an average amount of fuel that those tractors use in a year on fugitive methane, that's the equivalent to taking 700 family cars off the road because of the carbon savings. That gives you an idea, and that's because you get this multiplier of 76 for methane over CO2, which is very nearly 100 when you think about it. So it's so much easier just to capture methane and use it as a fuel than try and capture CO2 out of the air.
Can you do this on those Siberian lakes that are burping methane hydrates out of the?
Ultimately, we're already talking to Osaka Gas in Japan. Japan has the UN. Sorry, Osaka Gas in Japan has the UN contract to sort out the gas system in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh has incredibly high quality natural gas, 95% methane. Most sites are probably down in 60 to 70%. And so during the 70s, they were drilling willy-nilly and releasing all this gas, but they didn't actually use gas pipe work. They used water pipe work and so it's all leaking like a sieve. So Osaka Gas have got a massive contract from the UN to go in and sort it out. And they've got 8 lakes. I mean, there's these lakes that were gas sites and they collapsed. So they're still just see the videos of it just boiling away, methane coming off these lakes. And they're talking to us about putting our covers onto those and capturing the methane. You don't even have to upgrade it, 95%. We only upgrade to 92%. So that is vehicle fuel coming straight out of the lake. They constantly have villages that catch fire, that blow up, and it's horrendous. So yes, the answer is yes, we could do that on Siberian lakes. We just need, at the moment, we're focusing on dairy farm.
Yeah. I do want to say one more thing, because Margaret, one of the EPAs, I was not aware of this until I started working in this group, but the EPA's does have an international arm through Global Methane Initiative. And so what I think this might actually be a good connection to make with them, because they are working in countries that have sewage lagoons as their primary method of treatment, that are in many instances anaerobic, and they're talking, the whole initiative of their group is to reduce methane. And so I'm wondering if this might also be a good connection to make with Global Methane Initiative, if you haven't already.
I'll just write that in there, Global Methane Initiative.
Yeah,
so I think that would be really good to link them with IFEA, actually, because they are, as I say, they're working with Osaka Gas exactly on that, because that is because it's a fugitive emission. They're also working with the water companies on N2O, nitrous oxide, because that's the next biggest one.
Yeah.
Again, probably very much underreported.
Yeah, well, I think the UK is really good on that. I will, I just actually, the secretariat from GMI just emailed me. So if it's okay with you, Chris, I'll just put an introductory email together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you have my email?
I'll
put it in there.
I think I do.
Yeah, well, I'll put it in the chat anyway.
So on that note, Margaret and Piper, what this connection to the Global Methane Initiative and IFEAA, do you see any potential or vehicle for those organizations and this technology potentially to be deployed or funded for appropriately somehow, if it's even appropriate, for the projects in Alaska? Like, is there a path there? Is there any potential for funding and piloting this kind of thing? From what you know of those organizations?
No.
Blatantly honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of money, but they do have connections around the globe with utilities, with governments, with institutions, right? That they're trying to partner with and tech transfer with, educate. So that's where it's just it would be a good network, I think. But
I think so. Yeah.
You don't have a lot of money.
Yeah. So IFEA, the chairman of IFEA is the UK's he was the agricultural minister for the UK, George Eustace. So he's the chairman of IFEA. So he's a farmer. So he's the reason he's really excited about it. He's helping IFEA link up with other organizations because there's a lot of people aware of this and trying to make things happen. So I think any links we can make there'd be really, really good. That's my pleasure. And
Fantastic.
really
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you guys. And if you've got any questions, just drop me a line. And if I don't know it, I know someone who does. So, well,
not normal case.
thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you all.
All right, thank you.
everyone.
Are we going to
Bye-bye.
ring off
Bye-bye.
now? Is everybody going to ring off?
I got a jet. Yeah.
I think so. Yep.
Quite a few people needed to leave at 10:30. So thanks everybody who hung on.
Thanks
I
very
don't know the
much.
date
Nice
off
meeting
the
you.
top of my head for the next meeting. And Embry and Margaret will be contacting the subgroup of you. Robin did post that it is February for the NATO. There's 3 actually submissions, but is again as you told earlier, pushing
Thanks
for
very much.
Sorry.
Thank you, everyone.
Get wet there.
Bye,
We'll
Chris.
send you the PDF.
Bye-bye.
Don't worry,
Bye-bye.
it's popping out of your
Yeah, it is.
bag, but
Oh.
we'll send you the PDF.
All right.
All right.
Thanks everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Bye.